Hello there, my name is Mary Smith and I work in mixed media. I've been working in mixed media for quite a number of years, and today I'm going to show you how you can work with textural products, pastes and gels, and you'll be able to use them in your own paintings. So what I'm going to be working on today is a recreation of a painting that I've done quite recently for my annual Christmas card. It's got a little deer on and it's got some glitter as well, which makes it quite sparkly. So I'm going to be starting on a plain white canvas, and I've already drawn in and painted my little deer black, and I've also put some masking fluid on him so that when I paint the other colours on the top, I'll be able to rub that off, and then a little bit later on I'll then be able to carry on with the painting with my deer in place. So I'm going to start with a dark background, and although black sounds rather drastic, it's a nighttime scene and I want it to look as if he's coming out of the forest into the light, and I'm using the moonlight, as it would be, as my light source. So I'm going to cover the canvas now with a black mix of acrylic paint and gloss medium, and I always put gloss medium into my paint because it gives it a lovely sheen. So I'm just going to go right the way across the painting. Very random brushes. I don't want to create a smooth matte finish because I want it to have some sense of movement. It's a winter night. It could be a bit windy, but it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to cover this all over with the black. And I can leave light areas here and there so that it gets a more random finish to it. I'm using a large brush because it's much easier to cover a wide area of the canvas when you've got a wide brush rather than using a very narrow one, and it'll take far too long. So I'm covering up my deer, but I've got a rough idea where he is for later on. Right, that's about as much as I need to do at the moment. And then I'm going to go on to a dark blue. Now, I always mix all my paints beforehand because I like to have the sort of colours that you would call misty, colours that you might see in nature. I don't like too bright colours when I'm doing landscapes. So in my little pot, I've mixed this already, but what I've got colour-wise is cerulean blue, raw umber, cobalt blue, and a little bit of dioxazine purple. Now this is from the Atelier range and I use those quite a lot. So I've mixed that up, and as you can see I've got like a dark denim blue, which I think for nighttime scene will look quite good. So again, I've got gloss medium, and you can see how nice and shiny it is because acrylic paints tend to dry rather matte and quite dull, but if you've got gloss medium in, it gives it a lovely shine and it looks a little bit like oil paint. So I'm going to go over that now with my blues. And again, just randomly, to create all sorts of patterns and marks. I don't want it to look too flat at this stage. I like using big, broad, swooping marks as I'm going across the canvas. And then over in the top corner on the left, right-hand side is where I'm going to suggest that the moonlight is coming through the trees diagonally across my picture. So I shall just pop that over there. In this little pot, I've got white paint and I've also got some iridescent medium, which I've mixed into it to give that sparkly nighttime sky look. And I'm going to put that on at the top here and just let it come into the picture. And as you can see, it's got a nice silvery sheen to it, which suggests the moon coming through from this corner. And I'm going to take it down to the bottom here, because if the light was shining through the trees, it would be picking up anything in this far corner here. And I can use a little bit of the blue as well, just to get a little bit more blending going on. Acrylic paint's very versatile. You can paint with it very thin, so you can add more water if you want, or you can have it what they call impasto, and you can add impasto gel, so that you can have really thick layers of paint. I think I'm going to leave it at that, and then I'm going to have to hair dry this off just a little bit, because the next stage is where I put the modelling paste on, and it'll pick up all over the paint areas, so I'm going to just dry that off before I start with the modelling paste. Just while that just dries off a little bit, modelling paste is a little bit like polyfiller, but it's obviously good quality polyfiller. So in here I've put some out of the jar that I use, and as you can see, it's sort of creamy consistency, but you can get some lovely textural effects with it, because you're sort of doing sculpture in a way with painting implements. It's starting to dry off now. Right, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put in 3 trees, one very big solid one on this right hand side and 2 thinner ones on this side, and they're going to be silver birch trees so that they will pick up the light. They will look nice and sparkly, as it's going to be a frosty evening on my picture anyway. So I'm just going to lightly sketch in where I want the tree to be, which makes us, I'm just going to almost like sketch a big tree coming down here onto the canvas, and we'll have a little bit going off up there. So that's my large tree.
Mind your head there, Mary.
Sorry. Yep. And on this side I'm going to have 2 smaller ones. And same next to it. Odd numbers are always better in a composition, because they're pleasing on the eye. If you have 4 or 6 of anything, your objects, it just doesn't seem to look right. So we've got that sort of fairly evenly balanced. I'm now going to use the modelling paste onto the tree trunks. So I'm going to start on the left hand side so that we can see the painting process taking place. And what I'm trying to do is create a ridge along the edge here, a raised surface, that when I paint on top of it later, it will really pick up the light. So you don't have to cover the whole of the trees, just here and there, because if you think about silver birch trees, they have natural dark areas in them. So I'm leaving some little gaps here and there. And you can use the side of your palette knife. If you've never used one before, it's rather a nice exercise to have a little play. You see, you can draw into it as well. So if you're doing a tree that is got a lot of patterns in its bark, you can draw with the palette knife, and you can create lines, and then the paint that you put on top afterwards when it's dry will fall into the cracks and crevices and create more texture. Right, so I don't want too much in there now. I'm going to leave it at that on that tree and then go in with these. And again, just random little marks here and there. And the same with the other one. You can sometimes use something like a credit card for getting the edges really sharp if you want to. But I may do that later on when I put the texture gel on that has glass beads in it, which is another exciting product. Right, I think I'm going to leave it at that, and then along the front here I'm going to make the suggestion that there are sort of plants. It could be bracken or brambles, anything that you might find in a wood. So I'm just going to create some random shapes here with my palette knife. And these are going to be picked up in the light from coming through the back of the trees. It's quite fun using these palette knives because it's totally different to working with a paintbrush, because you're actually using the canvas as a support for your work. And just have a little bit round here. I shall be going in with darker paint again later, so anything that you find I'm not happy with, that you can go over again. That's the beauty of acrylic. You can go over your work. You're not restricted to one application only. Right, so I've got the suggestion of different branches coming from the floor area now, the forest floor as I call it. We'll just get some of this off here. That's that. Do remember, of course, to try and wipe a lot of your products off your tools, because acrylics and anything related with acrylic products in will dry quickly. So any brushes that you've used, stand them in the water so that they don't go and ruin your brushes. Right, the next thing that I'm going to use is this. It's called a bottle pen, and this is a tool for drawing, I've found, in that you can mix up your paint first. So I've mixed white paint and I've added some of my gloss medium, and because it has a nozzle on it, you can squeeze out your, I'll do a little bit on here so that you can see. You can squeeze, this is to make the branches, the smaller little branches. Oops, yeah, just get that to come out. There we are. So this is how you can create smaller, fine branches. And I'm going to be moving my branches again diagonally, because what I want to do is create a sort of window so that the deer is inside the window looking right out into the distance, and the branches are suggestive that you are watching what's happening to him through a window of foliage and branches. So we're going to come along here and up and over. So I would suggest that we've got a branch coming across here, down, and another one coming across here and tailing away into nowhere. It could be a little bit wiggly, it doesn't really matter, but as long as I leave this little section here, then my deer will be the focal point that you will see. And he's not in the middle of the picture, he's slightly to the right. So we'll have a little bit coming down here and there and over this side as well, and probably going behind the tree at that point there.
Just mind your head, Mary.
Sorry.
It's okay.
So we've got some wiggly branches there. If you find that too much has come out of your bottle pen, you can use a little Q-tip and just take a little bit of the paint off. So that's a little bit too thick there, but not to worry. I make mistakes as well. Right, well, what I'm going to do now is just stop for a little break while some of that dries off, and then I'm going to be working on the trees in the background, and I shall rub off the masking fluid on the little deer so that you can see him set into the picture. Okay.
Let us bring out the artist in you. If you'd like to learn how to paint or improve your painting, the SAA, Society for All Artists, is here to inform, encourage and inspire you every step of the way. When you become an SAA member, you get so many benefits, including the free bi-monthly newsletter Paint, packed with inspiring step-by-step projects, fascinating articles and detailed information to get your creative juices flowing. Discounts on over 13,000 art products featured on the SAA website and in the Home Shop catalogue, with free order line and free delivery in the UK mainland. A devoted SAA team on hand to answer your questions and give you the confidence and motivation you need to start painting and develop at a pace that suits you. Plus, a free welcome pack filled with gifts and practical help to get you started, as well as the opportunity to make friends with like-minded people.
Best thing of being a member is the inspiration from the magazines, to be able to purchase things at a very reasonable price.
Yeah, you get the reduction on all the materials, the advice you get.
I could shop from home.
It's a community.
It seemed like a very friendly sort of organisation.
If somebody's thinking of joining, don't spend too long thinking. Just join. They'll love it.
Hello again. Right, I'm going to just rub out the little deer now with the masking tape, masking fluid.
Mind your head.
Yeah, he's somewhere in there. There we go. I can go over that later. And what I'm going to do now is to get some trees in the background done, and I'm going to be using some inks, acrylic inks, and in here I've got some black, and I've also got a little bit of blue, cyan process, and also a little bit of the iridescent medium, which I think you might be able to see. So over here I'm going to suggest some dark trees. I'm using a sword brush. That's because I can get a lot of paint on it, and I can also create lots of thinner patterns that drift away to nowhere. And this area is going to be quite dark in the picture, so I want that to have a dense, it's in the shadows, and same in this corner as well. We'll have quite a lot of dark in here. Always in nighttime scenes you get areas that are lit by the moon, your tree trunks and branches, and you'll get very dark shadows as well. So you're going to create a combination of the two. Now where the deer is, I want to set him so that he's actually going through a gap in the trees. So I'm going to have quite a strong tree here, tailing away into the distance. So he's going to be running through that little gap there, and another one. And then just here behind him will be another tree. And I'm also trying to create some gaps by putting circles. I know that sounds a bit strange, but these circles will make little areas where I can paint light areas through, almost like you're looking through between the branches, like little windows. I'll have some dark areas just here as well. It will dry lighter because I've put water in with my mix of inks. And again, we'll have some darks down here. I'm going to just do a little bit of spattering now so that it's fairly random. I don't want it to look too worked over. Right, now while that's drying a little bit, I'm going to use the next of my textural thickening products, which is glass beads gel. Now this is a gel that has actually small little beads of glass in it, and it gives a nice crystal finish when it dries. The gel evaporates and then the little beads start to glisten, and for anything where you've got frost or snow or even rocks on a beach and you want that glistening sparkle, then this is the one to use. And again, I'm going to use the palette knife to put it on with. Just wipe some of these inky spots up. And I'm going to go on top of my modelling paste just to create some more sparkle.
Mind your head, please.
Yep.
Thanks.
So you can probably see the sparkle starting to appear on the surface there. The same over here. You could use this on beach scenes as well, because it could go on the surface that you'd have as your sand, and then when it's dry you can paint over the top of it. Right, just have a little bit in between here as well for extra sparkle. Now for the bit in the middle here, I want that to be fairly light because the deer is running away into the what could be dawn, or it could just be the moonlight. But what I've got mixed up next is a mix of colours that are sort of harmonising, and it's a golden pink. So I've got gold paint, which is a nice bright gold, and I've got some white, and I've also got a little bit of permanent brown madder, which is slightly pinky, so you get that soft colour in the background. So I'm going to paint in between where the trees are now, just
Your head, please.
and all the little sections in between the branches as well. It can be a little bit fiddly doing this sort of work when you've got one or two products to use, but it's better to do it the day before, let it dry completely, and then when you start to work on it, you're not worrying about messing it up with the side of your hand. But because they do take a little bit of time to dry, you're best to do it in stages. Pop that in there. I'm going to just paint the little deer in now so that you can see him a little bit better. Right, now I want to add a little bit more white in that centre in a little bit, but I'm going to also use some pale blue, and it's the same mix that I had before, which was this one, and I've added more white to it. So I want to get some more light up at the top of the picture there. So that one. I've also added the iridescent medium, so I'm still keeping in the theme of this sparkly nighttime painting. What you will find when you're working on a dark background is that the paint from underneath, i.e. the black paint, sometimes does absorb some of the colours, so you need to have your paint fairly thick in order to counteract that. I'll use a little bit of the blue down here as well now. And I'm still going to go a little bit lighter up here. So a little bit more white. Use a very, very fine naught, double naught, or it might even be treble naught, I'm not sure, pen to make some more very tiny little tree branch lines inside here. This gives it that fine detailed work, but the rest of it is quite random.
Gone a bit quiet, Mary.
Right,
You're
okay.
concentrating.
I am concentrating, yes, I'm definitely concentrating. This stage actually takes quite a long time in reality, so I'm trying to suggest as many different things as I can within the time frame. So we've got lots of suggestion of probably a windy night as well, so keeping the work flowing and also still creating the darks and the lights as well. I'm going to have a few dark areas where my silver birch trees, so that we've got that amazing contrast between dark and light. Particularly down at these bottom areas of the picture that are going to be in shadow.
We've got about 10 minutes left, Mary.
Okay. That gives me time to get some of these extra little bits in that I need. Using deer at this time of year is quite a good idea, because the amount of little deers that I've seen in garden centres and shops lately suggests that it's becoming quite a popular little icon for Christmas. Put a little bit more dark in here. Right, now I'm going to use the bottle pen once more, and I'm going to make some dark areas with a darker coloured paint again. And I've got some Payne's Grey in here. I need a piece of white paper just to see that it's flowing properly. Yeah, that seems to be okay. So I'm going to go in with some dark lines here and there, crisscrossing across the work. And the same round the trunks, just the suggestion that there's a dark branch coming from behind the light. And a few at the front here as well. And just have another little one over here. I don't know whether you can see in the picture behind me, there's quite a lot of dark branches over the big tree, which could be suggesting that they're coming from another tree out of view, because that's what happens in nature. Okay. Right, just going to quickly do a little bit of drying, and then I'm going to put on this glitter medium, which is a Pebeo glitter medium. You can apply this with any brush, but as with all products that I think this may be one way you've got to wash the brush immediately, or you might have to use a spirit-based remover. So as you can see, quite a lot of sparkle going on, but this is my Christmas card. that's what I wanted it to be. So we just stroke that over the surface. And that creates that lovely glittery look through the trees. I'm going to put a little bit on top of the texture gel. When it dries, it won't be quite so runny looking, because that will disappear and then you'll just be left with the glitter. And it gives it a nice golden look as well. I'm just going to have a little bit coming through from the top here to suggest the light from the moon. A little bit over here where it's coming across. Now I do want to get a little bit more light at the back of my deer there, so I'm just going to try and put a little bit more white paint so that he really stands out there. And just go over that tree trunk just there.
So we've got a couple of minutes left for a few finishing touches then, Mary.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. It is nearly Christmas after all.
I know, I know.
Oh, just mind your head.
Yep. Just have a last little fiddle with some thin branches again, I think. I'm trying to emulate some of the circular patterns I've got up there in my work down here, so that there's a coordination between the mark making, as I call it, and it ties your work as that's the way that you like to work when you've got similar patterns and brush strokes in your paintings. Because everybody works in a different way and everybody has their own characteristic little marks that they like doing, and mine happen to be circles. I think I'm going to leave it at that because really I need to look at it when it's dry, completely dry, and then do any little extra bits that I feel aren't quite how I want it to look. But I hope that you do try out these various texture paints and different ways of applying them, because you can use them with watercolours. I've worked on top of watercolour paper with impasto gel, and then you can paint with watercolours on top, obviously when it's dry. You can also work with pastels, you can work with pen and ink, and you can work with coloured pencils, but you have to have your texture gel or modelling paste completely dry, and when it is, then you can go in with other media on top. And you can also work with oil paints, provided you've dried off your textured surface. You can then paint over the top with oil paints and you get some lovely different finishes. So I hope you'll be able to try this after Christmas. Okay.
Hi, I'm Vic Bearcroft. I've created my half of the postcard and now I'm going to pass it on to my painting partner.
What have you got for me, Vic? Half a skull. What are you trying to say to me, Vic? Are you calling me an old fossil? Okay, let's see what we can do with it.